Emma is a Jane Austen novel that was released in 1855. Emma Woodhouse is a wealthy young woman living with her father with no intentions of marrying. But as she matches her friend with Miss Taylor with one Mr. Weston, Emma realizes that she likes matchmaking. Emma meets Harriet Smith and decides that she is Emma's new project. Mr. Knightley, the brother of Emma's brother-in-law, is he then also brother-in-law? I don't know. Repeatedly calls out Emma's behavior. Ultimately, Jane Austen's goal for this novel was to write about a character only she likes. As she said, I am going to take a heroine whom no one but myself will much like. Hi, my name is Jen, and in this video I will be talking about the two Emma adaptations, one from 1996 and one from 2020, and see how they compare. Unlike in my first video where I took specific characters and specific scenes, I will just talk overall about each movie, first starting with the 1996 version and then ending with the 2020 version, and then making references to each while talking about one. You know what I'm saying? The 1996 version was directed by Douglas McGrath and Emma is played by Gwyneth Paltrow, and the 2020 version is directed by Autumn de Wilde and Emma is played by the Anya Taylor-Joy. So I'm gonna start with Emma 1996 version, and not gonna lie, I started watching this kind of expecting to not to like it. I have not watched it ever. I watched it like last month for the first time ever, and yeah, my expectation was that I would not like it. In the beginning, Miss Taylor gets married, Harriet is introduced, and Emma wants to pair Miss Harriet with Mr. Elton. It all felt very natural. It didn't feel stiff or forced. It felt like natural human interaction. Mr. Elton is a slimy character who has a crush on Emma. And in this version, in the 1996 version, the sliminess of Elton's character only came vividly apparent at the Christmas party where he confesses to Emma about his feelings. I feel like in the 2020 version it was more apparent from the get-go when we meet the character. But yeah, I thought that was an interesting choice that Mr. Elton is kind of introduced as like this nice, polite man. I think I preferred Harriet in this film. I felt like she felt more like a real person, a real character. She didn't feel like a character. And in this 1996 version, Emma is doing a little bit of voiceovers where she kind of reflects on the events of the day and on her own feelings. I thought that was a really fun addition to the movie. And in the 1996 version, there are some scenes that were omitted from the 2020 version, so that there's that kind of difference between these movies. I think Churchill and Emma's bond is presented differently in 1996 version from in 2020 version. Emma seemed like very into Churchill and she talks about him a lot, while in 1996 version Emma seems a bit indifferent. But they were actually teasing a relationship between Churchill and Emma, more so in the 1996 version, while the 2020 movie had no indication of an actual relationship. But then again, Emma says that she is not interested in Churchill at all, even though it's kind of teased that she would like him. Maybe she did, but like, yeah, it felt like it was presented differently than in the 2020 version. I like Mr. Knightley in this adaptation too. I was not expecting to like him. I was afraid that they would make him very like aggressive and mean, but it felt more like a caring male authority figure rather than like a mean character, and I like that. I thought he was very nice. In the 1996 version, the scene where Harriet hurts her ankle, I feel like it was done better in the 2020 version, but I will talk more about it when I discuss the movie. But yeah, I'm quite shocked that it was done like that in a very anti-Roma way in 1996 still. Yeah. So there's the picnic scene where Emma insults... what's her name? Okay, so in the picnic scene where Emma insults Miss Bates, I felt like in the 1996 version it was presented very differently. It was uncomfortable in a like a quiet, discreet way, rather than an explosion of emotions from everyone. And then of course Emma is scolded by Mr. Knightley afterwards. But yeah, I thought it was a very unclimatic scene in this version. I mean, it was still dramatic, but not as dramatic I would have liked it to be. Emma realizing her feelings toward Mr. Knightley was presented very differently in this version. Emma kind of realized it slowly herself, and kind of, how do I say this? Like, we were shown her realizing her feelings for it, and that was a nice add to it. In 2020 version, Emma knew it, but she wasn't aware of it, you know. I'm kind of sad that in the 1996 version, the father character is not as prominent as in the 2020 version. I feel like he was such a added comic relief in the 2020 version, but now he was kind of just left in the back. The confession scene where Mr. Knightley confesses his feelings for Emma, I thought that was very sweet. It was quite calm and quiet, but it was still very nice. But I prefer the dramatics of the 2020 version. And yay, there was a wedding scene. I love a wedding scene. Thank you. I liked Gwyneth Paltrow's portrayal of Emma. I liked it even more than I expected. I was kind of waiting for, like, I don't know, a caricature, I suppose. But I thought she did really well. I mean, there was this self-righteousness and selfishness that we expect to see from Emma, but the kindness is still deep, somewhere in the deep. And yeah, I suppose her portrayal of Emma was fun to watch. Okay, so those were some of my scattered thoughts of the 1996 version of Emma, and now let's move on to the 2020 version of Emma. The cinematography of Emma in the 2020 version is stunning. They know what they were doing. I don't know if I missed it in the 1996 version, but Mr. Churchill and his presence and how incredible he is discussed in the Emma 2020 version from the get-go. So that was interesting. Like, there's this kind of anticipation to, like, okay, when do we get to see Mr. Churchill? Harriet in this version is presented like as overtly innocent and naive, and it kind of borders on maybe being too much, in my opinion. Emma is presented as like a self-centered, self-important, witty, and she's always right, and I love it. I thought Mr. Knightley's connection to the Woodhouses was not presented really clearly in this movie. He's the brother-in-law or the brother of brother-in-law, and yeah, I feel like Harriet and Emma's bond was a bit more friendly in this version than in the 1996 version. This could be because the actresses Anya and Mia are actually friends in real life, so maybe that came through in their chemistry. But yeah, I felt like there was more of a friendship rather than this kind of hierarchy that Emma is above Harriet, like in the 1996 version. The ballroom scenes in the 2020 version were so beautiful, so gorgeous, and they were nice in the 1996 version too, but I feel like they were a moment in this version. I felt like the picnic scene was done so well in the 2020 version. It's so dramatic, and like there's this kind of like realization that, okay, Emma has insulted Miss Bates, and then it's like people get offended, but oh my god, it's so dramatic, and Emma cries because she feels like she didn't do anything wrong, but she later realized that she does. Mr. Knightley, sculpture, oh my god, it's so dramatic. I fucking love it. And to me, I felt like a little bit that in the 1996 version, Mr. Knightley and Emma are shown more together. I don't know, but like, I don't know, I felt like there was more of kind of like a casual interaction between the two. Meanwhile, in the 2020 version, it felt more like, okay, Mr. Knightley and Emma are talking together. Look at this. You know what I mean? But it still was, their relationship was great in the 2020 version. I mean, the ballroom scene where they dance together and give each other the look. And then in the morning, Knightley runs after her and oh my fucking god, it's so stunning, absolutely stunning. As I mentioned before, the scene where Harriet gets hurt is still presented a little bit like having anti-Roma attitudes in the film. In the 2020 version too, obviously it's just mentioned, but basically in the 1996 version they kind of depicted Romani people as offensively. And I'm even surprised that they even didn't change it in the 2020 version. They should have just said like, oh, Harriet fell. That's it. So yeah, kind of disappointed that they didn't. Like, even though they did it better, they could have just said the Harriet fell, period. I think Churchill's character is very different in this version. I felt like in the 2020 version he's very serious and like sneaky. Was in the 1996 version he was kind of he was very lively and kind of, he had this kind of young boyish energy. And then in the 2020 version, Jane Fairfax and Churchill's engagement was presented as like something blindsiding for Emma. Yeah, it was presented differently and more dramatically than in the 1996 version. But in the end, everything ends happily. There's a wedding scene, which, you know, yay, we can have wedding scenes in period dramas in 2020. Hell yeah. So overall, I still think the 2020 version is my favorite out of these two. Maybe I am biased because I have seen it multiple times and I've only seen 1996 version once. I still thought the 1996 version was a really strong adaptation. As I said, I was expecting to hate it, but it was actually very entertaining and enjoyable, and the story of Emma. And then I felt like the 2020 version was kind of like an updated version of the story, but still very truthful to the original story. And bonus, after rewatching Emma 2020, I started watching the web series Emma Approved, and I watched it all in like a few days, and I absolutely love it. I thought it was such a clever adaptation of the film to have like this kind of matchmaking business of Emma, and Knightley does like the business side of it, and I just thought it was very cute, very clever, very interesting to have a web series basically done through vlogging. It was so good and interesting, period. So that concludes my Emma 1996 to 2020 adaptation comparison. What do you think? Which one is your favorite? Have you seen the 2020 adaptation? What did you think of it? Leave a comment down below and leave a like if you enjoyed this video. Subscribe if you want to see more from me. This channel is just me being a nerd about my varied interests. And please follow me on social media. I'm jenskosmos on Twitter and Instagram and on Storygraph. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope I see you in the next one. Bye!